continuously to the present. Although I took the number of rented holdings instead of rented land area between 1940 and 1980 due to the statistical limitation. And although I didn't include it in this graph, the figure in 2024, which was published last month, was 22% in Scotland. So coming back to the Japanese history of land reform, I needed to mention that historically there was a non-democratic relationship between landlords and the peasants, where landlords took a very high rent from peasants, which led to many tenant disputes in the past. So the purpose of the land reform was to solve the inequity through land ownership transfer. But I have to mention that the method was adopted by American General Headquarters after World War II, and there have been lots of arguments about whether that method was reasonable or not. But anyway, it happened, and the ratio of tenanted land went down to about 10%, as we already saw. As a result, lots of small landowning farmers emerged, and the land ownership was extremely fragmented. That is actually causing a problem at the present. Farmers needed to consolidate land parcels to get economies of scale. And this has mostly been done by land lease rather than land purchase because of the price and the taxation. So that's why the tenanted land area has increased recently in Japan. But on the other hand, in Scotland, excessive land concentration has been the issue, and there are ongoing land reforms to have fairer land ownership, which is my understanding. So there is a different context in both countries at present. So to get the fairer distribution or scale of economy, but in either case, my current interest is to examine the active practice of social networks and institutions in land market to design the future land policy. So the questions to be addressed here are related to the theme which explores the dynamism of land market actors. So I especially focus on their social relationships. So first, who really are the actors in the market and what are their relationships? And second, are there any intermediaries and what are their contributions? And finally, the role of trust in the market. So to explore those questions, I took a qualitative method based on very local social network analysis, which has been developed more and more in social science recently. So I selected a local community and identified actors, followed by tracing their relationship. I used a structured interview with multiple choice questions here. So here is a map of Scotland. I did a case study on 2 parishes in the borders. And here is a Japanese map, and a local community called Shuraku in Japanese was selected from the Kanto area. So from now on, I will present 3 case studies of these communities. So let me just jump into the results in Parish X in Scotland. For step 1, there were 3 different farmers. A was breeding 100 sheep and cows with 30 hectares of grassland. B had 80 hectares of arable farm, and C was sheep farming with 20 hectares of land. So when we looked at the land transactions between them, A rented 4 hectares of land to a private agent from a farmer living outside of the parish, and B also rented 100 hectares of land, and B let 20 hectares of it to C. In addition, A sold a large part of his farm in 2002 through the same agent within the parish, and then rented 10 hectares and 1 hectare of land from landowners outside. To add, I put here the number of land parcels in brackets in the box, as well as the type of lease and the year the contract started. So for example, this is 1 parcel of 4 hectares of land through seasonal let, and this has remained for like 20 years. So which means it has been renewed again and again until now, showing quite a long relationship between the agent and the farmer. So in step 2, I asked them to choose the relationship between them from these choices. Then A described his agent as a neighbor, and others as a friend and business associate. The B described her landowner as a business associate, whereas her tenant as a relative. And I also asked how contact took place. Was it in person or local events or using government schemes? Then interestingly, most of the contact was took in person. And lastly, I asked them why they transacted from these choices. Then A put the price for all of three transactions, but I focus here. He put not only price but also obligation and trust for the agent. So I think these results highlight that land transactions are embedded in informal social networks with trust. So before I move on to the second case, let me inform you of land matching service as it will appear in the next two cases, both in Scotland and in Japan, as an important institution. So the concept is clear. When you have land demand from farmers or new entrants seeking to expand their farmland, as well as land supply from providers such as landowners, then LMS functions to match both parties. As for Scotland, Scottish Land Matching Service was established in 2019, and I did field research with them in 2021. Now we have an insightful progress review written by Professor Sutherland and Corbett in 2023, and it covers all regions in Scotland, and it is operated by two advisors with funding from Scottish government. As for Japan, we have the institution called the Farmland Bank, created in 2014 in all 47 prefectures in Japan. So here the operating unit is the Agricultural Committee at each municipality, which is a small administrative body under the prefecture. The big difference here between the two is the structure of the land market. So in Scotland, demand exceeds the supply, whereas Japan has much more land supply due to aging and retirement. So we will see how these work in the next case. The second case is in another parish in Scotland, which is partnership between Farm L and M. This is not actually matched by Scottish Land Matching Service, but I decided to introduce this case as SLMS explains that this would be a kind of model case of their matching. So Farm L was an oat and cow farm with 475 hectares of land, of which 174 hectares belonged to Farm N in this county. So for crop part of Farm L, he bought and sold his land until 2008, when he decided to set up the partnership with M. And the big part of M came from the seasonal let from the Farm T in 2010, as well as land purchase in 2017. So other than this, Farm L bought 10 hectares of land from another landowner after 10 years of rent. So when we look at their relationship, Farm L and M are business associates, which means that they worked together along in the past. And other than that, friends and neighbors were involved in the transaction within that community, all of which were through personal contact again. And one in particular, there were two brokers here, but they were around advertisement on the telephones and in magazines, which are a totally different type of communication from the agents we see in the previous case. So yeah, so just lastly, moving on to the case in Japanese shuraku. So from here, you see how many small landowners are involved in compared to Scottish case. So there are 4 farmers in the Shuraku, and A was the largest rice farmer with 20 hectares of land, and others were also rice and pigs with around 10 hectares. So for Farm A, he started to rent before 1980s, mainly from owners inside the Shuraku. As you can see, each owner had a very small parcel, like less than 1 hectare, much less than that, which resulted from the post-World War II land reform I introduced before. So then 1980s and 90s, the situations were quite similar. And from 2000, there was an increase in renting from owners outside. In the last decade, the farm kept growing, and here is the intermediation to agriculture committee, which is the local official institution I mentioned before. Also, I have to say there are 3 individual landowners who are also working as broker. But their ways of brokering were very informal, in which they were asked by their friends to introduce someone who was able to farm their land, then introduce A. So as for step 2, I've already put different colors for different relationships. So within the 38 landowners here, Farm A described 4 in pink were relatives, 19 in orange were neighbors, and 12 in green were friends. So it's interesting to see that most of the answers to how contact was made in person again, while the agriculture committee intermediation was a government scheme, of course. Also, most of why transacts were trust more than anything, except for the agri committee's intermediation, which was only government support. And there were some others, which like farmland was in good location. So let's quickly have a look at intermediaries found in these 3 cases so far. So we've seen different types of intermediaries working: private agents and SLMS, the best practice example in Scotland, while individual owners and the agriculture committee has mixed together in Japan. So the private agent offers farmland buying and selling or land lease, holding over 100 offices across the UK and beyond, and covers a quarter of the market share. Whereas SLMS offers a free service for users as a public scheme, mapping farmers and owners across all regions in Scotland. The progress review shows that there were 26 maps as of 2023. So in Japanese case, there were individual owners who are working in Japan, just informally acting in the community. So by contrast, agriculture committee is created a legislative body at each local authority. So in fact, the Japanese government has now encouraged their work as intermediaries in supporting farmers, especially new entrants who want to expand their business. So from my point of view, a farmland market consists of existing informal social networks, really. And there are trusted brokers working in who are embedded in titling communities. So here I need to point out the risk of over-embeddedness, kind of, as if they are closed within the existing social networks only, then it may cause issues both in terms of fairer distribution or economic efficiency in terms of land use. To avoid a potential problem, so LMS can have institutional roles to expand the network to be more inclusive and to facilitate more optimal land allocation across the nation. So, however, to achieve the policy goals, I need to point out that whether it is obtaining fairer distribution or economies of scale, institutions are needed to connect to the existing network to deliver the land policy. Therefore, like working with established networks or trusted brokers is essential. This is a suggestion from my findings. So it can be concluded that this research found that social relationships in the community are actually the essence of land policy delivery. So it's important to think about what is the better way for social networks to use the government scheme in the future land policy reform. For the next step, so it should be quite interesting to explore more cases from other regions through international comparative studies. So hopefully I will be able to do more research both in Scotland and in Japan or in other countries to bring more insight into mainly in both countries. So this is the end of my presentation. So thank you for listening to my talk. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm very happy to have a chat with it. So thank you very much.
Can you hear me okay, Yumi?
Yes.
Arigato gozaimasu. We have a few minutes if anyone wants to ask some questions. Andy.
Thank you very much. Did you analyse in the case studies which of these farmers were owners, which were exclusively tenants, which were half owners, half tenants, and what the relationship was there? Because many tenant farmers in Scotland don't own anything there. They have to rent everything. But presumably these parishes in Berwickshire were owners who rented other land. Is that correct? Or were some of them tenants?
So thank you for the question. Yes, I found that the Scottish land transactions are mostly happening between the farmers. So yeah, maybe I just found the tenants, but mainly some of them owning the land, and then part of the farm were like rented. So maybe my investigation was just more like farmers rather than tenants. And yeah, there are operating, owning the farm and rented mixed together. And in Japanese case, it's like opposite. It's the landowners just rent out all of their land to the farmers. So it's happening between like fewer landowners who really not operating any farm and the farmers who fully rented the land from the landowner. So I think it's a very big difference between the two countries.
Yeah, thank you, Yumi. And then there could be an option to look at that in the future, or to also maybe look at crofting in the future as well. So lots more opportunities to study Scotland. Any other? Leanne?
Thanks. That was a really interesting presentation. I was curious, it seems quite likely that the land matched people would be new entrants and therefore younger. But did you have any other observations about the impact on diversity in the sector? I mean, in relation to gender or ethnicity or people who maybe didn't come from farming backgrounds?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I found that the new entrant with no background of agriculture is now getting slowly more getting increased in Japanese as well, to just find opportunities to get the success in agriculture industry. And they actually, the most difficult part for them is to access the land. Of course, then because of the social networks just like already established in the community, then they just very hard to get into that community for the actors outside of the community. So yeah, the very important role of the land matching service is to just provide opportunities for that kind of new entrants. And so that's actually the aim of setting agriculture committee in Japan as well. And yeah, I think it's the key. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more?
Yeah, thanks very much. That was really interesting. Did I get that correctly, that you see that there is a link between sort of decentralization of the Japanese land matching service and kind of the balancing of supply and demand, whereas in Scotland we have a fairly centralized system where demand like by far outweighs like supply? Would that be a fair assessment of your findings?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? Sorry.
I could help with that one.
You
as well.
mentioned about the supply and the demand balance in both countries.
Yeah, so I can help out with this one if you want, Yumi. So in Japan, the demand is outstripping, the supply is outstripping the demand because they've got such an aging population. And well, do you want to carry on from there? So Susie was asking whether or not the supply and demand was about decentralization, but I think it's more about demographic, if that's correct.
Actually, if I may step in there, like how much does it help that you've got 47 sort of local offices that they're dealing with sort of I do appreciate it's not a great role, but like, is that something that is conducive to sort of looking at matching people?
Yeah, so this in Japanese situation with supply have excess of land demand by new young people is happening everywhere, and I'm pretty much sure in all prefectures have the same problem, and the prefecture with less population has more serious situation with the rural aging and the dead population. And in agriculture industry has the more serious problem rather than urban industry. So there are lots and lots of land supply by the farmer retirement. So it's happening everywhere too. And the 47 all prefectures have a plan to just allocate the land use to get optimal land use. Otherwise, we have the serious problem of land abandonment as well. So yeah, that's really serious issue. Maybe not really happening in Scotland, I guess.
Any more questions? Okay, great. So Yumi's now looking at land abandonment in Japan, which I know is obviously a theme in Scotland as well. Not to the same degree of Japan, but there's definitely more work coming out from Yumi and the University of Nagoya around land abandonment. So keep an eye out.